is making a comeback.
The coronavirus has pretty much upended the nation, and that includes pretty much everyone in politics. There was a nasty 3-day partisan scuffle on Capitol Hill over an emergency financial package for the American people. Still, governors in several states are desperately trying to work on a bipartisan fashion. And the race for president has really taken a back seat during this time. But we still have our political panel ready and raring to go with our signature Liberty Nation analysis, wry wit, and those fun and prescient bravos and boos. So let's hit it, Frank. Joining me now is national correspondent Sarah Cowgill. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. Liberty Nation's managing editor Mark Angelides joins us from the United Kingdom.
Thanks for having me on.
And Washington political columnist Tim Donner. Hi, Tim.
Hello, Lisa. Good to be here.
All right, Sarah, let's start with you. How has the coronavirus crisis changed the political landscape in America?
Well, right now we'd be in the throes of primaries and probably weeding out candidates right and left, which we're down to 2, actually. But, states are canceling primaries, and that could weigh heavily heading into a convention. I don't know if the convention will be canceled. I mean, nobody seems to know anything at this point. What we do know is that we're not hearing anything from Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, at least not on a national stage, maybe with their own individual groups, but they're kind of being ghosted. Trump has taken center stage. The governor of New York, the governor of California, both Democrats, they're up and in public, and people are listening to them. But I don't see that with the other candidates in the race.
Well, we'll get to more on that with Tim in a few minutes. But first, I want to hear what's the situation in the UK, Mark?
Well, Lisa, the UK is now under an official lockdown, which means only essential services for people going to work. So that's the National Health Service, food companies, things like this, not restaurants, of course, which everybody has to stay in their homes at all times. They're allowed 1 exercise period per day and to leave the house for essential supplies.
Are people in your area following this, or is this just kind of a bunch of bunk and Lenders kind of go about their business as usual?
As I'm sure our viewers are aware, the English are a belligerent bunch and are never more happy than to revel in their rebellion. And so many people are not following these guidelines from the government.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Okay, back to the political landscape. Tim, will this help or hurt Joe Biden?
As I wrote on Liberty Nation last week, if I was Bernie Sanders, I wouldn't leave the race, because one of these days, Democrats who decided to take instructions from the party establishment and vote for Joe Biden and make him the apparent nominee are going to wake up and realize that here's a guy who just said if he was president, he would open the government, apparently not realizing that the government was never closed.
Ouch. Wow. All right. What about Trump, Sarah? Do you think he's benefiting?
His poll numbers are up. The middle Americans, they like their president. They want to respect their president. Some of them will disagree a lot with, how he delivers his message. But nevertheless, Heartlanders, Middle America, New Mexicans, Texans, they're tuned into him and they're trying to, give him kudos for how he's handling it. And even Gavin Newsom, he gave him kudos. Governor Cuomo, he praised his efforts. Ilhan Omar praised the efforts. And not that I would take anything that they said, to the bank to cash it, but that shows you that other people out there are giving him, the go-ahead and the structure and the partnerships that he needs. And I think in a time of crisis, he's doing darn good.
Now, admittedly, Mark, you're in a crisis of your own, but how is Trump's response playing, on the other side of the pond?
Well, over this neck of the woods, obviously you have the usual audience, the usual left-leaning progressive audience, that anything that the president does is a negative thing. It really wouldn't matter what he did. He could cure cancer, and they'd say he's trying to overpopulate the United States. I would suggest the majority of people think that shutting down the border to China, not the border to China, but shutting down incoming flights from China when President Trump did was an incredibly smart move. And a lot of people are pushing for the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to do the exact same thing.
Moving on down the road, Tim, the Senate passed and looks like the president will sign the coronavirus. We're not going to call it a stimulus. We're not going to call it a bailout. Let's call it an emergency financial package. What say you about that?
Well, it was clear from the beginning that if the president was going to propose and the Republicans were going to dispose, as they say, of some $2 trillion in emergency relief to the victims of coronavirus, from people who are physically ill to those whose businesses and jobs are threatened, there's no way they were going to let that go without getting their 2 cents in. Now, some of the things that the Democrats tried to put in there, one could understand. $2 trillion is being spent. Some of the things they push for are understandable. But what struck me was here we are in the midst of a national emergency, a crisis of unparalleled proportions. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know how bad it is, except that it's really bad. And the Democrats are pushing for $35 million for the Kennedy Center, the Performing Arts Center in Washington, where people like Nancy Pelosi and the other permanent swamp dwellers and the power elite go to be glorified and to be held like the Pharisees, to be put in the seats of honor so that they can be applauded. It made me, honestly, almost physically ill.
Well, that way Nancy Pelosi can go to the opera by herself
and be given a standing ovation by the Washington audience. That's what's important to her more than anything else, apparently.
All right, wrapping up quickly, bravos and boos for the week. Mark, we're going to start with you. What do you got?
Bravo is definitely President Trump's handling of this. He's shown himself to be the right leader at the right time.
All right, Sarah.
I have the same bravo. And my other little add-along bravos are for the people on the opposite side of the fence who are joining forces, might be an unholy alliance right now, but they're joining forces and they're trying to get something done in a bipartisan way. So bravo for that.
Tim.
A bravo to the governors of the 2 biggest states in the country, Gavin Newsom of California, Andrew Cuomo of New York, for putting politics aside. Admittedly, they need the federal funding, so it's smart for them to buddy up to President Trump. But good for them to put politics aside and care only about the fitness of the people of their state.
I am pissed we have been married way too long because we didn't discuss it, but those were my 2 bravos, Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo, basically for treating Trump as the commander-in-chief and not public enemy number 1. Well, that's all the time we have this week. Stay tuned to LibertyNation.com for current events, news analysis, and everything and anything that's fit to put on the internet that is high quality. For Tim, Sarah, and Mark, and the entire LN team, I'm Lisa K. Donner, Editor-in-Chief. Stay safe out there.
Truth is making a comeback.